Keenan Lake is the author of the book My Daddy Taught Me That, published by Welcome, a social worker and activist. You can like this show's fan page at www.facebook.com/The Keenan Lake Show on SIBN Radio. Feel free to post any comments, questions, or requests for his book on the fan page. Now let's go into the studio with your host, Mr. Keenan Lake, and co-host, Marcus Select.
Is that your phone?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Keenan Lake Show right here on SIBN Radio, and we appreciate all of our listeners tuning in today. Today we're going to have an awesome show. Mr. Keenan Lake and special guest. Keenan Lake, how are you doing today?
I am doing fine, Coach. I'm doing fine. I want to thank everybody for tuning in for another episode of the show. We have a lovely show lined up for you today, folks. And like we normally do, we're going to jump right into things, get things started. The topic of the show today, folks, we're going to be talking about parenting, about fundamentals of parenting, and also about raising children. These are topics that we've had on the show before, or topics that we've talked about in the past. However, I am elated because today, not only do I have a great guest on the show today, who's very knowledgeable about the topics and the subject matter, but we actually have our first female featured on the Keenan Lake Show today, so we're going to get some feedback and some information from the standpoint of the young ladies out there and the women out there in the world. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest. Her name is Shekina Moore, Mrs. Shekina Moore, and she's out of Atlanta, Georgia. She's actually used to live in North Carolina, and I knew her family from back in the day. But let me talk about real quick and talk about Shekina Moore and introduce her. She's actually a role model / she deals with free enterprise. She's an author of 3 books. New books are just out. The first book is actually Blood of Fierce. That's the one that's out now. She has another one coming out this month called Tween Style Power. And then she has one that's going to be coming out next year called The Art of Switch Coding. So, without further ado, Miss Shekina Moore, how are you?
Fabulous. How are you?
I am doing well, and I am so glad that you're on the show today. I am so elated that you're on the show today. So, tell us about the books. Tell us about what you're doing. Tell us about the move to Atlanta. Tell us all about what you have going on so our audience can be aware of who we have on the show today.
Absolutely. Well, again, my name is Shekina Moore, and anyone who knows me, they know that I'm a very passionate person. And so I do know Keenan back from my North Carolina roots. Big up to North Carolina. I am a former educator, and I actually, most of my career I spent working in the trenches in the school system. Saw a lot of things, and actually a lot of my past influences what I currently do and will continue to do by way of social activism. I believe in women and girls having a voice, which traditionally has been stifled, especially in conservative environments. And so I was actually led to write 2 of the books that our host mentioned. One of them is called The Art of Code Switching. I was inspired to write that book after serving as both a teacher and a licensed principal in the public school systems of North Carolina. And I noticed a lot of things that were happening that I felt like I was qualified to address and I needed to address. The other book is called Tween Girls Empowered with Style, and that's a part of my Tween Style Power initiative. And that book was written for our girls, because our girls, are so influenced by what's going on in the media, and especially because I actually run a style and brand agency. I left the school system to work in, the style, fashion, lifestyle industry, and I knew that it wasn't just going to be for the sake of working in the fashion lifestyle industry, be it my passion, but I was looking for a way to tie in my past with my future, if that makes sense. And so here I am. I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, in pursuit of my dreams. I'm very big on exploration of free enterprise, and I know that our young people who are watching, they need to see more of it. And so I'm very proud of that.
Wonderful. That is amazing. And like you said, coming from that background, having that background of education, being a teacher and principal in the state of North Carolina, the art of code switching, that is going to be a big book. Now, that was the one that comes out next year, right?
Correct.
And I actually really appreciate the fact of the Tween Style Power and actually the initiative with the regards that, you know, you're focusing on young women, you're focusing on the fact that the voices need to be heard. And you hit a point, and I want to really quick elaborate on the point that you hit when you said that the media, how the media portrays young women, how the media does not allow the voice to be heard. And then, you know, I think that is super, super important. And I really, really applaud you for taking the time out to do that because, you know, like myself, and I focus, you know, a lot of times my guests hear me talk about young men and, you know, with My Daddy taught me that in the men's program, I focus on young men because of the fact that I feel like the foundation is the family. And with that, as you know, our families are being broken because the men are not in the home. So I take it from that stand. But it's so great to hear, you know, you coming from that other side. So that is wonderful. So now you talked about Tween Style Power. You talked about the art of code switching. You have one out now, and that's called Blot of Fierce. Give us a little bit of information about that book.
Okay, absolutely. I actually was inspired to write Blot of Fierce after I made the move to Atlanta, Georgia. Because you have to understand, I've always been the diva type in regards to my dress. I mean, appearance to me, it will get you into so many places. Look the part, get the part. Has always been my philosophy, and so this is what happened. I mean, I'm just going to lay it down like it is. I was in the fittest shape of my life. I literally had gone down to a size 4. I just knew I had it going on, and I worked really hard for it, so I was really proud of it. Well, then I learned that I was pregnant with my second son. And so all of this was happening right before I was supposed to move to Atlanta, Georgia. And so I started to kind of lose myself for a minute. I gained 77 pounds. I was in this new city, no more friends. And, you know, suffice it to say, I felt like, who am I? Like, what am I, like, where am I? I'm in the twilight zone. And so once I snapped out of it, you know, I said, look, it's just a change of season. So I need to, you know, make this count. So I decided that I was going to use my experience, if you will, to help other women who are undoubtedly going through the same thing. Because after all, isn't that what I'm all about? I mean, am I not all about, you know, helping people come out of where they are and kind of elevating to a new level, especially in mindset? So I first had to go through the experience. So I created this 30-day challenge that really inspired me. I took the challenge first to snap out of it and come from this place of bottom and truly step into my place of fearsome as I believe God intended. And so I'm looking to bless other women with it. So far, we've been blessing other women. And we've even created what's called the Fierce Challenge, which is I'm gonna actually assist and facilitate women going through the process currently right now. So the month of September is totally dedicated for me for this Fierce Challenge.
I am totally blown away. That's amazing. I am totally blown away. So check this out. We're going to take a commercial break real quick, and then when we get back, we're going to jump right into the topic of the day and get rolling.
All right.
All right, you listen to the Keenan Lake Show, the number one show in Asheville, North Carolina, and special guest Shekina Moore, all the way from the ATL. You guys stand back. More is coming up right here on the Keenan Lake Show.
Ustedes están escuchando SIBN, transmitido por Salet USA TV. Síguenos en Twitter @SaletUSATV o visítenos en www.41596radio.com.
I need you to realize and accept that there is only one philosophy that I have embraced under the Coach's Corner's umbrella. And that is that we are the common denominator in every situation. So I can't blame them, they, her, and him. I am stepping up to the plate, and I realize it's all me. Not that it's all about me, but it's all about the legacy for those that come behind me to achieve a height of success that I can't even imagine. This is called the transgenerational shift of mindsets that we made
propel ourselves into the generations that is to come and tell them, I won't leave you a mess that you have to clean up, but I'll leave you a principle-centered life that you can celebrate and catapult into more success. Join me on the Coach's Corner at www.415-96radio.com. That's www.415-96radio.com. And follow me on Twitter. That's the only way you can keep up with the coach. That's right, DCC is in the house on SIBN Radio. Tune in.
SIBN Radio. And you have just tuned in to the Keenan Lake Show. I'm your host, Keenan Lake. I am a published author, book My Daddy Taught Me That, a public speaker, and the president of a men's development youth program. The purpose of this show is to create awareness on topics that are dear to my heart, primarily absent fathers, male role models in the home, youth and young adults and children, families, and neglect and abuse. I not only want to shine a light on these topics and create awareness on these topics, I want to educate, inform, encourage, and motivate. So please join us on the Keenan Lake Show. For more information about the Keenan Lake Show, give us a call at 415-967-2346. And we thank you for listening to SIBN Radio.
All right, we're back here in the studios with Mr. Keenan Lake. Mr. Keenan Lake, are you there?
I am here, Coach, and again, thank you guys for listening and tuning in today. So, getting into the show, we want to talk about parenting. We want to talk about raising children. You know, a lot of times when we talk about this topic, and I elaborate on this subject, I always talk about how the family is the foundation of our country and the foundation of what God intended it to be. So, as we all know, we have broken homes, we have broken families. But what I want to do is first jump into with our guest, Shekina Moore. Shekina, how do you feel about parenting, about the foundation of families, about that whole topic, that whole aspect?
Well, I truly believe that family has to come first, because if you think about it, it is the first institution that God created. He created family before he created, other institutions that we often highlight more, especially in media, the acquisition of money, our careers, but if our kids who are our seed, if they're falling by the wayside and every generation is doing worse than the generation before it, what are we really doing? At some point, we have to wake up and say, it starts at home.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We talk about that. And what I've always said, Shekina, was this. If your children are not learning from you, if you're not teaching your children, if they're not getting it at home, they're going to get it from somewhere. Whether or not they're getting it from someone in the streets, and we all know, too, if they're getting it from that person in the street or that entity in the street, then it's not going to be of probably any value. Most of the time when people are teaching your children, they're teaching them for their self-gain, their self-benefit. Now, there are people in this world who do have a passion for kids and who want to see youth and young adults prosper. But for the most part, that's not the case. Coach, do you want to weigh in on some of this, too, while we have you on the phone and have you on the air as well?
Well, I like what she said, that I was watching a special today about love, L-O-V-E, and I think love and family really should go hand in hand. But I like what she said, the emphasis should be on the first institution and not man-made institutions. So, she said it best. We should be honoring the first institution that governs everything else from here on out. In community, it governs politicians or politics. It should govern everything. And we weren't always in this condition, though we've had our civil rivalries among each other and other nations, but we weren't always this way. But I like what she said. She had a very good point. Man, give it up for Shekina Moore, everybody. I'm sorry, but Keenan is a little bit laid back. But Shekina Moore is in the house, baby.
Well, it's true. The role of mothers and fathers in the home, raising and loving, as was just stated, it has a psychological and emotional impact on kids. And so that carries over into the classroom. It carries over into performance. It every area of their lives. And then, of course, now moving to the next generation, things are passed on. Bad habits, good habits. So it's our job to make sure as parents that we are the role model, that we are the example, and they're not having to look to externals, outside forces and gangs and, bullying and whatever outlets they're looking for to fulfill a need that they just didn't get at home. We have to be their voice. We have to be those protectors and coverings for our children. We have to protect their minds. It's our role, and it's a huge responsibility that unfortunately we don't, in America, we don't prepare parents for.
That's a good note. So let me ask you this, Shekina. Let me ask you this. Because since you were an educator, you dealt with the youth in the classrooms and stuff like that, and being a parent, what do you see is happening now as a result to, where we have higher dropout rates? We have, a lot of what I call a lot of babysitting going on. We don't have a lot of educating going on anymore. Primarily, it could be from just the teachers. It could be from the students themselves. How do you see that whole thing going?
Well, that's an interesting question that you raised. Children with involved and loving dads in the home, studies have shown that they actually do have better educational outcomes. And as someone who was in the trenches, who was in the classroom, who was that person that was sitting in the offices having to, have parent conferences with students, sometimes I would get more respect as the leader in the school than the parent would get. I would have to check the student and say, look, that's your parent. So obviously there's something going on. I can't use specific cases, of course, and I never will for confidentiality reasons, but I will say that all too often I saw single parent families, and unfortunately sometimes the cases weren't that good. There were a lot of behavioral issues in a lot of those cases. There were a lot of dropout issues. I mean, when the family which is the head, is out of control, is out of balance, is out of sync, it has a trickle-down effect. And unfortunately, our kids are falling through the cracks day in and day out because we as adults are not living up to our responsibility. We're not fully protecting them as we should from all of these. And I know things happen. I know, mom breaks up with dad and there's a falling out or, you just didn't get married. But at some point, it all goes down to education. We have to educate within our communities. And a lot of that, I will say this, has to do with another institution that we spend a lot of our time, especially in the Bible Belt, which is church.
Yes,
Coach, weigh in on some of that, Coach.
Hey, I can't, the girl is on fire, man. What you want me to say? But Keenan, you probably could testify that even you as a social service worker and professional there in North Carolina, Asheville, get a little bit more respect than a lot of parents get because you command it. And Shekina brings up a very good point that in today's world, we seem to have things backwards when it comes to authority and response to authority commands and instructions. And kids today really respect those who can hold their authority well. I mean, kids are very, very smart. But I think Ms. Moore brings up a very important point that she received more respect than the parents did. And I think that that's why you're doing the show on parenting basics, returning to the fundamentals of parenting, because that is the control center, if you will. That home is the control center. And that plane, if you will, the home is like a plane. And so Ms. Moore brings up she's on fire, man. She's on fire.
So I think I agree with you, Coach. She's doing a wonderful job. So, but let me say this, and I'm gonna first address this with Mrs. Shekina Moore here. We all know that times have changed. Things change, times change. The ages change. So the same thing that worked in 1950 will not work in 2013. But with that said, what we see is this, and this is something that I talk about on a lot of my shows. We see what Shekina mentioned is the disrespect from our youth and our kids. So we see that breakdown in the parenting and the style of parenting. And what we see, primarily what I see here in Asheville, North Carolina, is a lot of, and I think what it is too is I think the moms are tired. The moms are tired. They're single mothers. They're tired of carrying that full burden. So a lot of times when you have primarily teens the teens get away with murder. They're not being supervised properly. They're not being able to have that same attention, particularly if they have siblings in the home. But then you have it where you're dealing with education as well, where the children are pretty much left at the discretion of the teachers or the educational system to pretty much, they go to school, they're there all day. They go home, they have no interaction with the parents. So, how are we going to get this thing back on track?
Well, it takes a village, and I'm not in a blaming mode. I'm not by any means saying, oh, well, it's all that single mom's fault. I mean, she's coming home from work, and she knew she put herself in that situation, and she should have known better, so now she needs to deal with it. And I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying is this. We have got to begin to teach our children, through modeling it, the difference between being assertive and being aggressive. We need to teach our children that some behaviors are okay at the playground or at home or amongst family, but then you need to know how to code switch. When you are in other environments, you have to learn the code. You can't just go in acting or being, you have to understand freedom of expression, but there's a time and there's a place, and you have to know what's in your best interest versus what's not. So a lot of aggression, I know, in households usually stems from lack of money. Lack of finances is a big stressor for a lot of us. And so we, as adults, before we even, this is something I'm passing down to my children. Free enterprise, entrepreneurship. Because until we have economic prowess, a lot of these things are going to continue to happen. Quite frankly, they're going to continue to happen. Until we have more education, it's going to continue to happen. So those two things go hand in hand.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I told Coach last week on the last show, it was a study, and the study was dealing with children who are crack dependent, drug dependent. But anyway, it was a 25-year study, and when they did the breakdown, there was nothing wrong with the children who were who were born addicted to the drug. The concern was more so of poverty. People, parents, families who are in poverty and who are poor, and that's where the concern came from. So you're absolutely right. When you're dealing with the less fortunate, or those who are not on the same economical stage and status as others, you always have that problem, and that's going to continue to be that way. So that's very important, what you're teaching your children and what you're passing down. Coach, you got anything you want to weigh in on that? Oh, go ahead, Shekina.
Well, I was going to say that it's not just the poverty, as an alone variable. You add to that these video games that are promoting violence. The TV's raising, and so all they see is violence. And then the only way you really know how to love is to do things that your mind really isn't ready for, nor are your finances.
Well, but today, and I was talking to an individual yesterday about this, and they were asking me about taking my group to church. Do I take my boys to church? And I said, well, that actually was part of my program initially. It was the fourth week of every month, I would take my young men to church. But then what started happening was I saw that it was a disengagement. Okay, so what that means was that my group, I might have 10, 12 young men in church, but they were disengaged. Half of them would be asleep. The other half would be looking into the ceiling, So, it's basically like, how do we get these kids engaged? But it's something what you just said. It's like, how can we get these kids engaged when their minds are programmed? They're constantly on the video games. They're constantly on the cell phones texting. They're constantly on the computer doing this. So it's really, really difficult to keep children engaged in certain things when, with this computer era, they're all over the place.
Yeah, back to your question, and she brought out a very good point. I had to write that down, assertiveness versus aggressiveness. That was good right there. I told you Miss Morris is on fire. So let's just imagine now a parent listening. this is my contribution to the conversation. There are at least 5 stages of development for your child. There's the developmental stages regarding the physical. Then there's the cognitive stage. Then the psychosocial and the psychosexual and the moral stage. And what we're saying to parents is that, listen, if you're not engaged in these stages, then you're leaving your child to chance. And we don't want to raise a child or see a child be developed by luck, by chance. We want intentional development with our children. And I think that later on, Keenan, that Miss Moore should talk a little bit more about this code switching. I think that her book and her philosophy about code switching may be a great thing to leave with the parents in this particular show as a practical method to move forward. Because maybe I think that just the phrase code switching, the child may be able to grasp that instruction, that modeling, even in just putting it in a different context, a different wording. The child may be able to get that because that's exactly what they do. The kid is real nice at home, and then you catch the kid on the street, they're cussing with their friends, and they switch codes because they're with their friends. So I think Miss Moore should talk a little bit about that as far as adults and how to teach that and how to model that as we consider the 5 stages of development for our kids coming up.
All right, Coach, I think we need to take a break, and when we come back, we'll do this, that. Let Mr. Shekina Moore talk more about the art of code switching.
Is that all right, Ms. Moore?
It most certainly is.
All right, we'll be right back. You guys stand by.
Responsible, accountable. Who taught you that? My daddy taught me that. That's right, the new book, all the way from Asheville, North Carolina, representing the legacy of Benny Lake, is Keenan Lake, the author of My Daddy Taught Me That, the book and the program for young men in Asheville, North Carolina, and throughout the region. Tune in to the program, the project, and the book at mydaddytaughtmethat.com. For more information, email lake@mydaddytaughtmethat.com or call 828-582-2261. That's 828-582-2261. mydaddytaughtmethat.com. You're listening to the sound of the Coach's Corner. Ready, set, go. That's right, DCC. Are you ready for the hardcore motivation, daily inspiration, and sure up your spiritual foundation on DCC? If you want more on the go and you need to know, www.415-96radio.com. Join us there as we cheer you on to the finish line of life. This is not your mama's show. This show is for the new generation of those young men and women who know and realize that I've done enough foolish things, I've made enough mistakes, and now it is my time to accept the philosophy of DCC. That is, I am the common denominator to every situation. Join me at www.415-96radio.com. That's www.415-96radio.com. And follow me on Twitter. You're listening to the sound of the Coach's Corner. You're listening to the sounds of your lifestyle improvement station.
Hi, Jamaica Chapel, College Park, Georgia, in the house. You're listening to SIBN Radio.
Hi, this is Ted Bones calling from Richmond, Virginia, and you're listening to the Lifestyle Improvement Station, SIBN Radio. Y'all turn it up now.
Hi, this is VJ Washington calling from Atlanta, Georgia. You're listening to the Lifestyle Improvement Station, SIBN Radio. So turn it up.
Hi, my name is Sonia Claiborne from East St. Louis, Illinois, by way of Columbusville, Missouri. You're listening to the Lifestyle Improvement Station, SIBN Radio. Turn it up.
What's good? It's your boy Joe coming from Snellville, Georgia. You're listening to the Lifestyle Improvement Station, SIBN Radio. Y'all turn it up.
You're listening to the sounds of your lifestyle improvement station, changing the way we live. SIBN FM, powered by Select USA TV.
Well, we're back here, man, and we're having so much fun with Miss Shekina Moore, as well as the Honorable Keenan Lake.
Yeah, right, Coach. So listen, and you have a really good idea just now. Coach Marcus Collette wanted to make sure that Ms. Shekina Moore actually mentioned more about the art of code switching. And I think that would be a very good idea because I think you contested it to it, Coach, that it'll be able to give not only parents some more information, but our kids will be able to relate to it as well. So, Shekina, let us know more about that book and about the art of code switching.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny, the term code switch, I used to use that all the time when I was a classroom teacher. What I learned early on in my career was that our students, they don't like to be called out. They do not like to be embarrassed. They do not like to be picked on, so to speak. And so what I learned to do is to pull students to the side, and I will always, find my leaders, who are the most vocal, who are the people that they're going to shine, they don't care, they want the limelight. I would always find those students, and I would pull them to the side, and I would always have that conversation with them. That conversation would always sound like this. Look, here's the thing. I've already noticed you're a leader. I've already noticed that you have pull. I already noticed that you have all the swagger. So look, I'm just going to let you know. I'm depending on you. I'm counting on you to be a leader in this classroom. I need you to give me your attention so that the rest of the students will give me their attention. And I guarantee you this. If you can do that for me, not only will you win in this class, everyone will win. Do you like to win? They'd always say, yes, ma'am, I like to win. Cool. Can you do that for me? Because here's the thing. I need you to code switch. You know how you use that leadership and you do other things that may not be so conducive, may not be so good for you? Well, I want you to now code switch. I want you to use those things in this formal setting because here's the thing about formal settings. The environment doesn't change. When I was a kid your age, I had to do the same thing. When your mom was a kid, she had to do the same thing. Well, guess what? This is a formal setting. It's called school, and this is Miss Moore's classroom, so I'm going to use code switch in here for me. Can you still use those leadership skills and code switch for me? And they would say yes. So I came to really build these relationships with my students because I learned the art of pulling them to the side, having those conversations, getting them on my side so that everybody in the classroom would win. And I never had to write up students. I never had to send anyone to the principal's office because I ran my classroom. And so the art of code switching literally was born out of that.
I think, I think what I hear you saying, and Ms. Moore, tell me if I'm right or wrong, I think that what I hear you saying is that you valued the language, though it may be negative or disrespectful, you valued the child from which the language was coming, and therefore you you were trying to awaken the skill or teach the skill to the child that, listen, this, what you're doing right here is not appropriate for this environment. And where it's referring to the parent, the parent wants to know, if I can ask that question, how do I use this at home? Because I hear what Ms. Moore is saying is that as a teacher, as an educator, she valued the child's as a person, even though the child may be acting in that moment disrespectful. How does this code switching help the parent, and how can they use it to bring value to their child-parent relationship?
Well, again, it's the same thing, and I even teach it with my son. I mean, he's 5 years old. He's about to start kindergarten next year. I went to his open house last week, and I said, look, this is a schoolhouse. I had the exact same conversation with him. I said, you know how you run around the house and you do some of the things that, you're free. You're in a very free and loose environment. I said, but sometimes you're going to come to places where the environment is they have more rules. So you have to follow those rules. Here's what I want you to think about. You don't have to change who you are. You're still Colin. That's my son's name. You're still Colin. But I want you to be the example. I want you to be the leader. And guess what's going to happen? You are going to win. You start telling them what the incentives are for them doing positive things and stress that they don't that you still like them. I still like you. I know that you curse. I know that you listen to rap music. I know that you like to wear your pants down. I know that you start listening to some of the things they do, and instead of crucifying them for doing some of those things, just teach them, because kids, they just want to know you care. Just teach them how to win. And so for me, even in parenting, my job is to teach my sons how to win, because, look, these environments are very monolithic. And these kids' personalities are very pluralistic. So what's happening is, you're in these formal settings, and you got, all these backgrounds, and I have 2 kids, and their personalities couldn't be more different. But I value each one. Mm-hmm. So kids just need to know, I care about you as a person. I care about even your personality and what you bring to the table. But this is how I want you to channel it in these environments. Does that make sense?
Wow. It makes perfect sense to me. Yes. And I want to actually elaborate and piggyback on what you said, Shekina. Listen, I think you're absolutely right. And there was a situation that took place several months ago where we had a professional chastise a teenager in front of the other teenagers. And so what happened was they got out of the line and went back and forth. So I ended up pulling the professional to the side and said, listen, we both know that what the teenager did was wrong, but the way you should have handled that was exactly what you said. Pull them to the side, because once again, no one, particularly in this day and era, these kids do not want to be embarrassed in front of their peers. And so it's not. And this is one thing. It's not like hold on, I'm hearing some feedback. But anyway, the thing that's changed is from when I was coming up, and when I guess maybe you guys are coming up until now, is we had to we bit our tongue, and we might have sucked it up, not said anything. But now these teenagers, they're not biting their tongue. They're going to try to dish it out just as much as they can, or as much as they feel like they're taking. So I totally agree with what you just said. I think that is great.
But Keenan, the other thing is, when we were kids, I'm not trying to belittle our childhood, but the only empowerment we had was from the community. And because they were all together as a conglomerate, it seemed like we would win if we cooperated. I mean, I'm just being real. But, I mean, if we would have had a Facebook and a Twitter and an Instagram and all that, and the place to kind of let the wind out, without getting in any trouble, and place to create our own community, perhaps we would have some of the same responses. And I know a lot of kids get a lot of bad press, and they're doing some bad things sometimes online, but they get a lot of bad press because now they're dealing with certain technological platforms that we didn't have access to. But I think it goes back to what Miss Moore is saying. And I think what I hear Miss Moore saying is that we've got to value these kids. We've got to value them first as parents. And then we got to expect educators and other community leaders from wherever they may come to value the same. But it starts with the parents. And she said with a 5-year-old. So you're never too young. You're never too old to value the youngest child, because that young child will pick up that value as his or her own value and translate that through behavior modification, behavior modeling in any environment. It goes back to how it was when we were kids. They used to say, now listen, you better not go out there and embarrass your mom and your dad or your uncle or your auntie or your grandmother. So when we respect the child and value the child, according to what Ms. Moore is saying, when we teach them the skills rather than focus on the behavior and how offended we are about it, but when we switch and teach skills, man, that sounds like a winning situation. Miss Moore, please tell me, how many times did you win using code switching? I know I'm just being facetious about a number, but talk to the audience about winning a little bit more.
Honestly, in the classroom, I won every single day. I won because even if a student got out of line, their peers checked them. I didn't even have to.
Wow.
That's big. I like that. And then also, I even like the fact, and you use something, see, one of the things that I teach my young men about is about sagging. I think that sends out the wrong message. I think it has a lot of negative connotations with it, which it does. You present wrong. It's just not a good thing. But and this is the thing too. And I'm still kind of swaying when you said, when you talk about when you say that there's a time and a place or a setting for everything. Like, for example, when you're with your boys, you're kicking it, SAG, do whatever you want to do. But when you're in class or when you're at the mall or when you're, it's about, and I think I totally agree with what you said. There is a time and a place for everything, because we all do it. When we get around our peers or our peeps, so to speak, we put on and we act up and we cut up. Particularly men, when we're around other men in football games or basketball games, we let loose and we act a fool, and we, knowing that we would not do that in a work setting or a public setting or a business setting. So I like that. I like that a lot.
Well, I watched for a long time, and you're on it. I watched for a long time the different dynamics between students and teachers, and then I would look at that same student, because I was always big on having rapport. I would show up to my students' games. I would let them know I'm watching you. I'm checking on your schedule. I'm seeing how you're doing your other classes as compared to mine. And I noticed this interesting dynamic, and I could appreciate it because I was an athlete myself growing up. But I noticed how students would interact with their coaches as opposed to with some of their teachers. And it all boiled down to one thing, and that's relationship. Mm-hmm. See, your coach is giving you, your coach is grabbing you by the neck, pulling you to the side. The coach is grabbing you, on the sideline, saying some of the things they're saying. Because they're forming a relationship with you, it makes it easier when they say something in public forum, so to speak, around the other guy. Mm-hmm. Because the relationship is there. The problem sets in when there is no relationship. The child feels embarrassed because they know you don't care about them as a person. If this is what they think. You may care, but they're not receiving it. They don't think you care because you haven't had one single conversation with them that suggests otherwise. And so that is another dynamic that has to be taught. And if it happens with teachers, of course it happens with parents. Kids doing all kinds of things, and the parents know nothing about it. It's not the time when the kid is actually getting suspended to have a conversation with them about what they should and shouldn't do. The conversation should have taken place when you walked them to the kindergarten classroom on day one. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that's why I said, I told my son as soon as I walked in, forget registration, where's the PTA?
Okay.
Where's the PTA? Because I'm about affecting policy as well. I said, but I need to know not only what your teacher's name is, I need to know how to get there, what's the quickest route to the classroom. I said, because I'm definitely going to be checking up on you, and I'm going to be watching you when you don't think I'm watching, because I want to have those conversations with you.
But see, that's, Shekina, that's different, though. I mean, you're great as a mom to do that, and parents, I know parents do that a lot of the times, but, that was one of the biggest things my parents did for me. Like, look, you know my name, you know who we are, you got our number. If this boy acts a fool in this classroom, let us know. But parents don't do that no more. In fact, one of the biggest pet peeves that I have is this. Your son is a football player, basketball player. Uh-oh, I'm hearing the echo, Coach. Can you guys hear me echoing, or do you guys hear me echoing?
No.
Okay, well, I'll keep going. Anyway, but your son is a standout basketball player, football player, whatever, and your family shows up to every single athletic event, but not one PTA meeting, not one teacher-parent-teacher conference, nothing. And I think that's a problem, and that's something that we have in our community, and it can't be that way.
Well, I think
Well, that too was taught. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ms. Moore.
Well, I was gonna say that too was taught, because that's probably what their experience was growing up.
But I'd like to apply now this code switching to the parent for the parent's sake. Stepping back now from being a parent to being an adult, because the parent, sometimes we're a little bit apprehensive about this whole raising kids scenario. And so I'd like for Ms. Moore after the break to talk a little bit more how I can apply this to my personal life as a parent, because certain things may be cool when I'm running with the boys and running with the girls, if you're a girl out there running with your girls. But when you come in the house, do I need to switch up? Do I need to, go to a different mindset? What do I need to do? We'll take a small break, Kenny. We'll be right back.
All right.
Responsible. Accountable. Who taught you that? My daddy taught me that. That's right, the new book, all the way from Asheville, North Carolina, representing the legacy of Benny Lake, is Keenan Lake, the author of My Daddy Taught Me That, the book and the program for young men in Asheville, North Carolina, and throughout the region. Tune in to the program, the project, and the book at MyDaddyTaughtMeThat.com. For more information, email lake@MyDaddyTaughtMeThat.com or call 828-582-2261. That's 828-582-2261. MyDaddyTaughtMeThat.com.
Ustedes están escuchando SIBN, transmitido por Salet USA TV. Síganos en Twitter @SaletUSATV o visítenos en www.41596radio.com.
All right, we're back here live with the Keenan Lake Show. Shekina Moore, author, entrepreneur, and educator, is on deck, and Mr. Keenan Lake, all the way from Asheville, North Carolina. Author,
all right,
activist.
Okay,
I ain't done, Keenan. What you talking about, man?
I thought you were, cause my bad.
Civil rights leader among the youth there. You know what I'm saying? Just really getting it done. So, hey, Miss Moore, please help those who are listening who really need to understand as an adult how to use code switching to prepare themselves to raise their children in a more nutritional way, a healthy way.
Absolutely. One of the things that I talk about in the book is that parents, I'm saying we, because I'm a parent too, we really have to define what it means to be a great parent, to be a successful parent. And, we do this all the time with our careers, with our goals, even in, like you mentioned, sports. Some of us are athletic. I know parents who are devout, softball and baseball players in community teams, and they set goals for themselves. Well, the same thing has to happen in parenting. We have to make sure that our kids feel happy, that they feel secure, that they know what to expect. Their routines have to be set. They can't be all over the place. And so we have to make it our number one priority to make sure that our kids can predict even what the consequences of their behavior is going to be. And even for myself, I mentioned earlier that both of my sons, they have totally different personalities. And I'm a very authoritative type of parent. So with my son, that's a little more aggressive, rebellious, so to speak. He's 1 year old. He's night and day from my other son, who's very laid back. I don't have to be as authoritative. I actually need to be more firm, and I need to, with both of them, show them that, I care, spend time with one, spend time with the other, but in essence, I have to be a chameleon. I have to just do what works. If it's not working, I got to change it up, and I have to be very, very aware, and that only comes through planning. Mm-hmm. So I have a vision for my family, just like I have a vision for my career. Mm-hmm. And I think if we teach that to our kids and model that, guess what's going to happen? My son can look up and say, Mommy has a vision board. Every year of his life, he's seen Mommy with a different vision board, and it changes all the time. Mm-hmm. So he thinks the same thing. Mommy, I need to put my pictures on the wall. Mm-hmm. I need to see this thing. I need to see what I'm going to become. Their meals, I already know. I can go back to 2008 and tell you what I ate in April. So we have to plan our lives. Our kids are a very integral part of our lives. Why not plan it? Why not plan their success? So when my child walked in, of course you're not looking anyway, because what did you tell Mommy you want to be? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you know where you're going and you know that the decisions you make day in and day out add up to what you're becoming, then I don't have to talk as much. I don't have to discipline as much. I don't have to rebuke you as much. I can celebrate you. I can high-five you. I can show up to your games with full confidence knowing that your homework's done, that when you get home, you know dinner's going to be ready. I mean, it just makes sense.
Well, Coach, I think you're absolutely right. Miss Shekina Moore is on fire.
The girl is on fire, man. She brings
she's going to think
she brings a whole new perspective to the positivity of resolving the problems that we may find in parenting, Keenan. And I know that your heart is just always heavy with the fact that you want our listeners to know that, listen, we know we harp a lot about what the issues are, and we're trying to keep them informed, but we're going to try to bring guests on along with suggesting ourselves what's practical, what you can do right now, today, to better your family, you know?
Exactly. So, listen, before we start wrapping this up, I was so impressed with the tween-style power. Please, Shekina, give us some more information about that, because I want to hear a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. Tween Style Power is a not-for-profit organization that I started that addresses positive body image with our tween girls and teen girls, really coming against a lot of the negative imagery that we're over-sexualized in the media. We're stereotyped, and that have a profound impact on our careers, not only in the media, but in everything. Pay scales are going to continue to be low for our girls if this continues to happen over the next century. And so I definitely don't want our girls to feel like they have to have premature sex to be loved. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're recognizing our tween girls who are taking the pledge to set the example for their peers, other tween girls, that, you know what, it's okay to not have premature sex, and it's okay to be on the honor roll, and it's actually the thing to do, to be a respectable young girl that dresses her age.
Good stuff, good stuff. And listen, while we're at it, Keenan, because I know you want to get some more out of this, but let's tell everybody, Miss Moore, where the books are available, the Twitter, and how to connect with you, so that in case you say something real hot and Keenan jumps on it, we got that out of the way. Tell them where your books are available and the Twitter and the Facebook information.
Absolutely. Tween Style Power, Tween Girls Empowered with Style, and The Art of Code Switching. Both of those books are geared to our youth and are available at www.moreeducation.org. You can find me on Twitter at Styling Atlanta, Styling ATL, and you can find me on Facebook at More Education, Tween Style Power, and Styling Atlanta.
That's what's up right there, Keenan. I don't know what you're going to do, man. This is a great show. We still have a few more minutes left, but we want to encourage those parents that are out there, Keenan, that listen, we talk a lot about responsibility and accountability, but then we need to talk about how. So we're trying now to make a shift in our shows and bring you the how-to, back to the fundamentals, working in the trenches. You know what I'm saying, Keenan? I mean, this is the best of the best.
I think you hit the nail right on the head, Coach. And I actually want to thank Shekina for bringing the insight that she brought, because, like you said, Coach, we talk about the issues a lot. We talk about what's going on out there a lot, and we talk about things to enlighten folks. That's what I think that my greatest gift is being able to inform and enlighten people about what's happening out there, how these youth are acting, and actually even what's going on with the society and the systems at hand. But being able to bring the resolution to the forefront as well, like, this is how you change it, and this is what we're about. Being able to say, okay, you know what, this is the problem, but here's a way that can change. And what I want to thank Shekina for, again, is the fact that the planning piece. You hear that, and you hear, in fact, I'll say this real quick, this is getting off, but about 4 months ago, 3 or 4 months ago, the mayor came to talk to the mayor of Asheville. Her name is Terry Bellamy. She came to talk to our group. And one of the things she said was exactly what Shekina just said, is about planning, but having that forefront. Write it down every morning what your day is going to be like. Write it down, put pictures up like Shekina mentioned, have those goals and those plans tangible, because if you have that there, you'll be more apt to do it and to reach it. So I'm really, really grateful for that.
And then, the brain is a muscle. So these are avenues or components of exercise psychosocially and psychologically that gives us a window into the future. I think, Keenan, you've said it best in previous shows, that as long as we do nothing, then we leave the planning of our children's future up to others who do not always have their best interests at heart and who will look to profit But I think what Miss Moore and what you're saying right now is that, listen, the future is still a blank check, and the possibilities are endless, and the intangible is reachable if you are willing to do the work. The work will be hard. It will be a grind unlike you've never seen. You will have to check your attitude at the door and all of these things. But I think what Miss Moore brought to the table today is that you will be able to feel lighter. You will be able to fly higher. You will be able to really ascend to the place of your imagination if you start right now. You got to start right now.
And also, one of the things he pointed out, too, was this, too. The discipline piece won't be as severe. You won't have to do as much when you plan. So I took that, too. Mrs. Shekina Moore, go ahead. You had something you were going to say.
Oh, no, I was just going to say absolutely. What people sometimes are not aware of is that things are always moving. Nothing is ever stagnated. So if you think you're still, you're actually moving backwards.
Wow. I think look, I'm going to put a little, wait, hold up. Keenan.
Yeah. Say that one more time. Yeah, say that again. I like that.
People actually are unaware that when you're standing still, you're actually moving backwards. Nothing is stagnated. There's no such thing.
I like that. Yeah, thanks for the motivation, young lady. I appreciate that. All right. Yeah. So now I know. So now, see what I'm talking about. So now I know. See, this is what I do. When I take my break, it's like, okay, you know what? I take a break, and then you look back, like you said, and it's like, I've been doing this for the last couple of months, and it's stagnated. I'm actually moving in reverse. All right, I got you.
You know, and I just want to celebrate Miss Moore. Listen, I want you guys that are listening to me, go to your Twitter page right now. If you don't have one, people say, well, I don't know what Twitter is for. Twitter is real-time communication. That's all it is. You're telling somebody right now what's happening, what's going down. I want you guys to go to Twitter, and I want you to follow her. And I believe one of them, Miss Moore, correct me if I'm wrong, is Styling ATL, at Styling ATL. Is there another one out there? Tween Style Power, Is that the other one?
Tween Style Power, yeah.
Yeah, I need you guys to go to Twitter, and I need you to follow her. Now, don't fake follow. Follow to keep up with what's going on, because you can't catch this lady. She got wings. She done already flew away. She left the airport. She's already gone. But if you want to see what she's doing in flight, go to Twitter at Styling ATL and Tween Star Power. And then don't forget Keenan now, because he's a jumbo jet, but he's in the air. Tween, and give him the Twitter one more time, man.
Oh, man, my Twitter is the KL Show. You can always find me on Facebook at Keenan Lake, or my radio is the Keenan Lake Show, and also My Daddy Taught Me That. The website, www.mydaddytaughtmethat.com.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And listen, we want to encourage you guys to get involved. Listen, to the level of your involvement is the level of honor bestowed back upon you. When you go to www.mydaddytaughtmethat.com and contribute to the cause of helping other young men who are less fortunate than you, then now you're saying, I am a candidate for the same honor for my projects that may be coming up or coming out. And I want to encourage all of you to go to www.mydaddytaughtmethat.com and contribute. Listen, if you really want to know how the world works, most of the money that's contributed to any cause around the world is raised by poor folks.
That's true.
Can I get some help?
That's true.
All right.
That's true. So listen, at this point in time, folks, it's about time for us to wrap up our show. I want to thank Miss Shekina Moore for being on the show, for giving us all the wonderful information, for giving us some insight. I also want to thank Coach, our assistant co-host, for being on the show, Mr. Marcus Sillette. We will see you guys next time. Tune in for another edition of the Keenan Lake Show. In the meantime, have a safe week. We'll see you later.
All right, you guys, stand by. You've been listening to the Keenan Lake Show live and on demand on SIBN Radio with special guest Shekina Moore, all the way from the ATL, author, entrepreneur, and educator. And whatever you do, Blah to Fierce is one of the books. Tween Star Power, another book, and The Art of Code Switching. You don't want to miss these new practical revelations of how you can change your life today. Until next time, this is the Keenan Lake Show. My name is Marcus Sillette. You've heard from Keenan Lake and Miss Shekina Moore. We'll see you next time.
Show. Welcome to the Keenan Lake Show on SIBN Radio. Thank you for joining us today for the Keenan Lake Show. We know you will be empowered as you consider the content shared by Mr. Keenan Lake, co-host Marcus Select, and our guests. For more information about Mr. Keenan Lake, please visit www.mydaddytaughtmethat and feel free to email us at lake@mydaddytaughtmethat.com. Books can be ordered from Mr. Lake by calling 828-582-2261. Until next time, you've been listening to the Keenan Lake Show on SIBN Radio.